Hello again. Welcome back. This is Andy Vining here reading My Mother's Diaries from 1948. July 1948 began with unsettled weather, though the farm was as usual full of movement. John went off to cricket on the first, and I went to Mrs. St. John's for some dancing lessons for the children. Jane and Margaret came to tea later, and I tried to do a little gardening, though the midges drove me indoors before long. Jennifer was quite beside herself, begging me for a ride on Anne and Carol Lister's pony. The Listers live in Baddesley Road on the corner of Beechwood Crescent, and they kindly brought the pony over to the farm again, so Jennifer was able to have a ride. She was really happy. On the 2nd of July, John was busy cutting vetches over Flexford with the big mower, the great green swaths falling in neat, tidy rows. I went to tea at Beechcroft and washed Janet's hair. I do hope we get the water laid in soon. Anne Lister brought their pony right into the back lawn. Much excitement from Jennifer and Janet. Mrs. Manning took John and I to look at her bees going into the hives, and I was stung for my trouble. You don't realise how sharp a bee sting feels. The third brought us great success. 13 bantams hatched out from the eggs I thought might have been spoilt last month. A good number, always satisfying, the little broody hen and count of chicks underneath them. Mrs. Howes wrote a letter to me with the tragic news of her husband's death, which was really sad. He was such a nice man. We had all the children up for a picnic on the lawn, and Elsie Abel got married today. Doug and Marge West called with Malcolm, and Bet and Fred came as well. Andrew was not very well today, and that worried me a little. But rain fell heavily on the 4th, a terrible day, rain without pause. Much of the corn was laid flat, which is a farmer's misery to see all that damage after all the work they'd put in. And if the weather does not turn, it'll go rotten in the fields. Andrew was much better, thankfully, and I prayed fervently for decent weather to come. School rehearsals filled the 5th and 6th, and I then drove John to Flexford in the car. But I am still very nervous driving, but thankfully there was no other traffic on the road. I made some blackcurrant jelly today as well. There was a lot of fruit this year, all the rain, I suppose. On the 7th, the play at Mrs. St. John's school went off well indeed. All the dances went right, no mishaps, and I was so pleased with the children. Bet came along to the performance and stayed all day with us. That evening we went to see Balalaika in Southampton with Mr. and Mrs. Manning, a lovely evening out. The 8th was quieter. I walked round to Mother's at Beechcroft, and John went again to the pictures with the Mannings. Eric and Peg Inge and the family all called in, and later Ernest and Phyllis Manning came for supper. The house always seems busy. Marjorie West bought me 12 pounds of cherries for bottling, so I set to work on that and stored them in the cool of the pantry. Mr. and Mrs. Peck and Virginia called in the evening, but unfortunately Jennifer developed a head cold and went to bed. We had another performance of the school play again on the 10th. Mother, Bella, Nora and her family, Judith, Veronica and George, all came, and even John managed to find time to come along as well. Then everybody returned back to the farmhouse for tea. I was asked to make a pompadour wig for Judith, and I achieved it with much fiddling and pinning. The roses in the garden are glorious, and so I picked a beautiful bunch. They've done particularly well this year. The weather, however, turned horrid, cold and dull, but I did manage to get some gardening done between the showers. In the evening, I wrote to Bob and caught up with some darning, and Miss Howes came and took Janet home for tea, which was nice of her. Village errands followed. We called at Beechcroft with the laundry. I had my hair shampooed and set. Bet stayed to tea, and Mary Sinclair telephoned to say she'd be arriving on Thursday. On the 13th, I cycled to the post office to send a rabbit to Alf, all wrapped up in parcels. Hope it gets there okay, but one does what one must. I tidied outside the back door around the dustbins and did some needlework. The Manning bees swarmed that day, great clouds of them rising and settling again. Always fascinating to see and slightly alarming to watch. Mother and Bella walked up in the evening for a chat, and John ran them home. By mid-month, John finished picking up the oats and vetches at Fleckford. Long hours of steady hard work trying to beat the weather. Janet went to the church fete in Ampfield, and Betty brought her friend Mary to see the farm. I cut the front lawn and weeded the sweet peas that are all starting to look lovely. At last the water pipes arrived on the 15th. Great lengths of promise for bringing water to the house at last, where it is desperately needed. It was a hectic day. Auntie Lily and Uncle Stan came to lunch. Mary and Joe Sinclair arrived after tea, and Phyllis and Eve bought biscuits, which was nice of them. The 16th took us to Eastleigh shopping. Joe, Mary, Mother and the babies all in tow. Heather had new shoes bought for her. We got Bet a vacuum jug for her birthday, and Mother, Bet and Auntie Bella all came back to tea. Rain returned on the 17th. A terrible day of it. Fred, Vi, Phil Roberts and Mrs. Roberts called on the way to Milford. We bought paint for the house, and John and Joe played cribbage. I drew a chicken for lunch tomorrow. The 18th was better. Doug and Malcolm West called, and we walked with Mary and Joe and the babies down along the gallops to Ram Alley and the Camel's Hump. Unfortunately, to my annoyance, both Jennifer and Andrew had lost their blazers at school. Goodness knows how they managed that. I had a long talk with Mrs. Manning about bees. They are fascinating creatures, though temperamental, but they appreciate that the first gladioli were out in flowers and keeping themselves very busy. The 19th was a lovely day. I made a sponge cake for Betty's birthday. John, Joe and Cummins fetched Father's desk from Beechcroft and put it in the hallway at Hiltonbury. I planted out begonias and tobacco plants, giving them a good watering. Betty's birthday was on the 20th, and so we all went to Beechcroft. We had a lovely party, and afterwards Joe Sinclair had to return home, but Mary decided to stay until Saturday. I went to Mrs. St. John's for the dancing. They are all doing so well for little ones. I listened to a play, Loyalties, on the radio in the evening, and John went to an NFU meeting in Romsey. The children all went to Milford on the Sunday school outing on the 22nd. Heather wasn't too well, and I kept bottling 12 pounds of cherries. They'll be lovely later in the year. On the 23rd, the children performed their play at the sanatorium. I went with Mary, Bet and Mother, and it was really well done. Everything went well after all the work they had put into it, and it was very well received. Everybody came back to the farm for tea afterwards and stayed for the evening. The following evening, John and I went to see Forever Amber at the Empire Theatre. That was a bit of an eye-opener, but not sure that it deserved all the publicity. Mary Sinclair and Peter left on the 24th. And I shall miss her. So sorry to see her go, because she's lovely company. Ross and family called in on their way back from holiday, and we heard that Fred Rash had a heart attack, which was bad news. In the evening, I listened to the Constant Nymph on the radio, and that was very good. Mr. South, the builder, came on the 25th to speak with John about cow pens, as they really need to be enlarged as the herd is growing, and we need more modern equipment. But more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, he hopes to begin work to bring water to the house on Wednesday. It has been long awaited. I went to Beechcroft to wash the girls' hair in the evening, and once back home, I began sewing rickrack into the girls' striped frocks. The heat built steadily. The weather was getting better. Heather was a bit fractious, teething perhaps. John managed to cut out the wild oats in the corn at Flexford, trying to keep the crop clean. But it's a big problem, wild oats. Bob Charlton telephoned. He's coming tomorrow, and in the evening I finished the striped frocks for the girls. Mrs. St. John sent me a lovely book for helping with dancing at school, and Ben Clifford came to tea. John brought home 2 ferrets, useful creatures for rabbiting, and they were put in a small hut by the garage. Now the men are cutting winter oats at Flexford, and that day 1 hare, 2 leverets and some rabbits were shot and brought home. The land never stops giving us food. The heat persisted into the 28th. Mother and Bet came to tea, and Mother did some needlework for me. Jennifer and Janet went to Southampton, to the Flicks, to see Bambi. The children broke up on the 29th for the summer holidays, so they were all pleased. Mr. Harvey came about the buildings at Flexford to see what had to be done with them. I interviewed a Mrs. Prime from the camp about working here in the house. She seems a very nice lady and suitable for the work, and Betty came for the last time on the 13th. I shall miss her as she starts her new job soon. The summer heat was intense now, getting really hot. The children were nearly naked all day, and I spent time altering some green shorts for the girls. The month closed with visitors again. Bet, Fred, Vi, and the others all turned up, and although Fred was better, he must still rest. Nora and Stanley brought us some beautiful tomatoes from the nursery, and Bet and Fred saw the vicar regarding the wedding banns reading tomorrow. We listened to Shop at Sly Corner on the wireless in the evening, and that was very good. July had been heavy with work. Vetches had been cut, oats gathered, hay rescued from rain, wild oats cleared, ferrets arrived, rabbits shot, and bantams hatched. Cherries bottled, bees swarming, water pipes delivered, fences and cowpens planned. Weather against us one day and blazing the next. The land forever demanding attention, and still the house is full, visitors coming and going. Children performing birthdays marked, weddings planned. The farm moves forward in July, whether one feels tired or not. And so we move into August 1948. August opened warm, though not quite as fierce as July. The girls, Jennifer, Janet, and little Heather, along with Andy, took their tea down to Monk's Brook, paddling and playing by the stream as children should in the summer. I did small bits of mending, and Joan Bucket telephoned. And then the weather changed on the 2nd. Mrs. Prime started work, very speedy and willing, but she seemed quite suitable and very good at the job. John took us to Hursley for the Hunt Gymkhana, Mother kindly looking after Heather for me. It was something of a washout because the weather was not too good, but we enjoyed it all the same. At last, the big day arrived. South began trenching for the new water pipes up the drive on the 3rd. The ground was open up in long, muddy scars all the way up the farm drive, but the promise of running water soon was worth the mess. Andrew spent time with the workers cleaning their shovels and was paid for his efforts, and he was very pleased. I walked round to Mother's, but Heather was cross and not very happy today. Teething, I believe. And once I got back home, I managed to cut the front lawn before the rain returned. Unfortunately, Mrs. Prune left as quickly as she'd come. Her husband had found rooms elsewhere, so that was short and sweet. I'll have to look for somebody else now. Mother came with big Uncle Fred to get some papers signed by Uncle George. Joan Bucket and her family came to tea, and John telephoned the Labour Exchange about finding another woman to help me in the house. Janet and Jennifer wheeled Heather up to the village in the pram. I painted the black cupboard in the kitchen white, determined to freshen things up a bit. Then on the 6th, Jennifer fell ill with a bad throat and earache, so I kept her in bed all day. Betty came and cleaned the kitchen, which was nice of her, and that evening John, Auntie Bella, Mother and I went to the pictures and saw Sitting Pretty, which was very good. The doctor came on the 7th to see Jennifer, and John fetched pills from the chemist as prescribed for her, and Jennifer seemed to improve by the evening. The rain was relentless now. Will it never stop? The 8th brought heavy rain again, but John had reason to be very pleased with himself as the spring oats down at Ramaley won first prize in the Gromall farm competition. Bet and Fred walked up to the farm when they could, avoiding the showers and the rain, and Jennifer remained in bed, but she seemed to be improving. Les and Joan Beaton called, and we had a long chat with them after they left. I put a second coat of cream paint on the kitchen cupboard. The doctor called again on the 9th and ordered Jennifer to remain in bed until Wednesday and not venture out until Friday. I went to see Mrs. St. John about further dancing for the children next term, and Bet came round and helped out in the house. I was given some new ointment for Jennifer to use. I hope that helped. By the 10th, the men were progressing well with the water pipes, though everywhere was a horrible mess of soil and boards. Jennifer was up in her bedroom, out of bed. I tied up the gladioli, torn and splendid now, and I cut the front lawn again. I moved cupboards about the kitchen, and it all looks much better. The 11th was a great day. Bet's wedding cake was made. I mixed it here and took it to Beechcroft for baking because they have a bigger oven than me. We had a proper chinwag when I was round there, Nora, Bet and Mother, all about the wedding and the arrangements to be made. Then Hoskins came round in the evening and had a chat, and it was better weather at last on the 12th. I finished tying up the gladioli in the vegetable garden. They look absolutely magnificent. I also took 2 rabbits down to the lady who had found Jennifer and Andrew's missing blazers. So thank her very much for what she'd done. John went to his Growmore meeting in Fair Oak, and I painted the cupboard once more. On the 13th, John was cutting the prize-winning oats at Flexford, at last in good weather. The children went out to tea at the Bishop's, and I painted the Welsh dresser. On the 14th, Bet called, and we went shopping together while John remained busy at Flexford. Mother and Bella came to admire my gladioli. They certainly do look spectacular. I finished painting the dresser today, and the rain returned briefly on the 15th, but Jennifer's earache flared again. I took Janet to church with me to hear Bet and Fred's banns read, rather a stirring moment. Then Mr. and Mrs. Manning came in, and Joan and Les Beaton as well. They are becoming really good friends. I did some mending in the evening. The 16th was lovely and bright. Lassie came into season, and Bet arrived with the news that it would indeed be a white wedding. Ever so pleased, hooray. John finished cutting the oats at Flexford and began cutting the oats on the Hillfield that very evening. I planted some more pinks, and the 17th was a milestone. The thrashing at Flexford was completed. 85 sacks and 181 bales of straw, a jolly good tally. Rain interrupted further cutting on the field in the afternoon, whilst South and his men continued their work on the water pipes, leaving everything churned and muddy. Wet weather held up on the 18th, but John managed to finish cutting the oats at Ramaley. I was still worried as Jennifer did not seem quite right. In the evening, I cut out a small frock for Heather to wear at Betty's wedding. And at last, on the 19th, the sun returned. John managed to cut the wheat at Flexford. We went to Malcolm West's birthday party and had a good time. But best of all, and the most amazing thing is, today we have running water at last in the house. Such a simple luxury, but transformative. We can at last start to live properly, wash hair and have proper baths instead of using kettles and hot water in a bathtub in the kitchen. A luxury indeed. Betty came round to try on her wedding veil, and she looked absolutely beautiful. Fortunately, by now, and surprisingly, Jennifer was well enough to travel to London with Betty and Mother on the 20th to buy wedding finery, and she at last was able to get the jodhpurs she wanted so much. Nora and the family came to tea and brought Gwen Gibbon with them. It was lovely to see her again. We hadn't seen her for a long time. Harvest was continuing with John cutting oats on the Hillfield and at Ramaley. But unfortunately, rain came again on the 21st, so John went to football as harvest was stopped again. We walked to Mother's for tea in the rain with the children, and they were soaked to the skin. We admired the wedding finery that was all there now, coming together. John later attended the Eastleigh show. The doctor put Uncle George on a special diet that Toss herself would have to prepare, as I put my foot down on the matter. I wasn't doing that. I had enough to do with the house and the children, and special cooking was not on my list of things to do. In the evening, we listened to White Oaks on the wireless. The 22nd was fine. My suggestion that Toss do her own cooking didn't go down very well, though we shall see what happens. We went to the show at Fleming Park, and John and the children went to the Buckets for tea. One of John Bucket's pigs had died. That's never easy on a farm for anybody. That night, in the moonlight, we moved the black pullets into their ark in the front field, and we shifted the cockerels as well. It was a late and strangely romantic evening, moving the birds in the light of the moon, but a pleasant job to do nonetheless. The 23rd was cold and windy but dry, and John finished picking up the oats at Flexford. Bet came all day and cut out bridesmaids' frocks. And Auntie Toss agreed to manage her own cooking, for now. On the 24th, Bet and I went to Fortune's and picked 60 pounds of plums. The afternoon was spent bottling them and putting them in the cool of the pantry. That evening, the rain came again. It was drizzly and dull. And the 25th was another poor morning weather-wise. Bet came all day, and I finished my week's darning, and John went to football. But the 26th was glorious again, and John cut barley on the hillfield. Auntie Toss and Uncle George were off on holiday the following week. 3 cheers indeed. Away they go. I telephoned Ethel about shoes. Nora rang, and on the 27th I mowed the front lawn while John picked up wheat at Flexford. 50 pounds of plum jam were made, the kitchen thick with steam and sugar. The 28th stayed fine, and harvest progressed well. Flexford was nearly finished, save for one load, and Bet wanted to borrow our lawnmower. On the 29th, I helped John turn the barley sheaves on the hillfield, hoping desperately that the weather would hold. And I had a bath, a real treat now that the water runs properly, and it's hot water as well. The Beatons came for the evening, and we had a good old natter. They are really good friends. Joan Bucket telephoned asking for the children for the day on Thursday. The 30th remained fine, and John nearly finished picking up the barley. Now that Betty has finished working with me in the house, I resumed to do the housework myself, and I also worked further on the bridesmaid frocks. Frank White was helping John with the harvest, and he came in to tea. Clouds gathered on the 31st. The wind rose and the rain returned, curse it. And it's the Romsey show tomorrow. But John just finished the harvest in time, thank goodness. Frank White came in to tea with us. August had been the month of harvest in earnest. Oats cut and thrashed, wheat gathered, barley sheaves turned by hand, 85 sacks and 181 bales stacked. Water finally arriving at the house. Plums picked in quantity. Jam boiled in great weight. Pullets shifted by moonlight. Ferreting and rabbiting continuing. Pigs lost and calves tended. Weather our constant adversary. Work relentless. Weddings planned. Children growing. And the farm, despite rain and mud, brought safety through another harvest. In the next episode, we go into September and move into the autumn on Hiltonbury Farm. But at least we have running water. What a luxury. Thank you for listening.